Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Trans Day of Visibility. I am Dr. Huerta. I'm one of the co-directors for the Center for Gender Equity and Social Justice. And I want to give a special thank you to our student coordinators for helping set the space up, to the library as well. And a special thanks to Jonie K. Rose and Susan Golightly, who helped organize this event. As part of Trans Day of Visibility, we have provided a gender-inclusive restroom, which is located to the back of the library there. And if you all have any questions, please let us know. We're here to serve and hear you. So just to give you an idea of what the program is going to be like, first we're going to hear from our community members on the cruises. Then we're going to have Susan Golightly give a Trans 101. It's going to be very brief. Then we're going to have a reading of I Am Jazz. And to end, we're going to have a little forum in which Jonie K. Rose, Susan Golightly, and Aubrey will be talking about their own stories. So without further ado, I would like to invite Caleb and Max to come up, or whoever wants to come up first. Max will come up first, and he will be sharing his story of transitioning and being a trans man.
Hi, my name is Max, and I'm, let's see, I'll start this. Can you hear me? No? Yeah. I guess. I'm a very old trans man. I'm 71. I am post-op as of 1975 in phalloplasty, and prosthesis was 76. I was the first trans man to ever receive a prosthesis that was developed by Dr. Scott from Baylor in Texas. It was actually for trials for what you all call cis men now, regular, natural-born, intact people. And so I was the very first one to receive that. My doctors at the University of Missouri Medical Center and I collaborated on the procedure, what I wanted incorporated and not incorporated. It is one of those things that is different for everyone. Everybody has different degrees and different ideas of what their gender is or their sexuality is, and that's fine. We all have individual fingerprints. We're all different. And so whatever works for everybody is good. But that was something that I could not live without. I'd reached a point where I was either going to kill myself or something had to be done. So I presented myself to several physicians. I called, trying to find some way to get hormones. At that time, this was not something that was done for female to male transsexuals at that time. It was all pretty new. There were several male to females that had been done in the 60s that I had met in California. So I just began to call doctors and got a hold of one who referred me to a gynecologist who actually was sympathetic to my cause and gave me oral hormones. And from there, I was a couple of years before I could link up with plastic surgeons in order to begin the process of making my outside match my inside. So I was very fortunate in having an extremely good plastic surgeon who did top surgery and was friends with several other doctors that they'd gone to school with. Asked me if I wanted to do more, if I wanted to complete this, and of course I jumped on it. So we all met, my plastic surgeon, Dr. Lynn Puckett from the University of Missouri, and Joe Monty from the urologist from the university. And so at that time we collaborated and decided on procedures to use. So mine is a groin flap that extended from here to here and had to be done in several steps. And then it was rotated. And during this time there's healing process, and then everything was intact and ready for go. I had to heal up before I could get the prosthesis put in. So there are complications that can arise if you don't do what your doctors tell you to do. So if you get to that point, and when you get to that point, or if you even desire that point, be sure you do what your doctors tell you to do. Like, don't get out of bed until they say it's okay to do it. Don't get up and run around and play handball on the wall. But I was just very fortunate. My surgery was completely free because I was a guinea pig. You know, I gave them my body, and then they gave me my body back, my real body. So I was just an extremely lucky person. I only had to pay the anesthetist. So, and from there I've been married and divorced twice. Moved to Las Cruces just a few years ago after being existing in Deming for a while, and met and sat in on several of the trans groups in Las Cruces, which there are. If you're into that, there are several trans groups there. So that's pretty much my story, with the exception of different people realize at different times too what they want, what their body wants, what their mind wants, what their soul wants. In my case, I didn't even realize I wasn't a boy until I was 5, so it was kind of a given situation. But that basically is my story, and if anyone would like to ask a few questions, feel free. If I'm not comfortable in answering, I'll just say that. Yes?
When did your voice change?
It didn't, as far as I know. You mean I have a, really? Well, I'm surprised to hear that, because I hear it on tape recorders, and I go, oh my gosh. But, so I would assume then probably fairly early on, because I know friends of mine that I've met here, theirs has changed within, just a few months to a couple of years of taking hormones. So that one I'm afraid I really can't answer, because I wasn't aware, and there were no other trans people to bounce that off of. So anyone else? Anything else?
Does anyone have any other questions?
Have you had to have ongoing medical issues or attention, or has it pretty well stabilized early on?
That part was stabilized, but I'm 71 years old, so it's all the regular stuff. It's all what everybody else has. Arthritis, DDD, the usual stuff.
Anyone else? Stand on that?
Not really. It's something you'd have to take care of with your own doctors and that kind of thing too, but nothing stemming from the surgeries, not from my transition surgeries. I've been fortunate, however, I must tell you that I do have a friend who was like the 3rd or 4th after me to get a prosthesis, who a few years ago had to have his removed because of infections. Not his penis, his prosthesis.
So Caleb, I have a question. How has it been to witness the evolution of psych care for women transitioning into men throughout the last 50 years for you?
Well, it's been very different, because when we started there wasn't any program, there wasn't even any psych screening or anything. They just trusted who I was, what I said, and I more or less prescribed my own hormones, and they wrote it and did it. And since then, that surgery, we developed I went back to work at the same hospital, by the way. And they developed a program where there was psych screening and that kind of thing. And occasionally, things happen that are unforeseen, as some people are unhappy once they have their surgery. And so they blame the physicians and everyone else instead of some of their own issues. And that shut us down, because after a couple of those, we decided we weren't doing it anymore. So they'd gotten through the psych screening somehow. Now it's more advanced, it's more developed, and you have to go longer than we had to. So I'm sure that it's a much more comprehensive screening process. Any other questions?
Hi, sir. Did you say in what city you had your surgery and all your
The
things
University
done?
of Missouri Medical Center at Columbia, Missouri.
Thank you.
That, there's no program left there, though.
But Missouri for non.
Oh, yeah, for non-Southerners, you Northerners, it's Missouri. For us Southerner rebels, we were a rebel state for about a week. It was Missouri.
Does anyone have any other questions for Max? Thank you, Max. Caleb.
I'm gonna try to get around so y'all can see me. Hello, I'm Caleb. How you doing? I broke my ankle, and I wanted a scooter anyway, so I got this. I broke my ankle to get a better scooter. Sounds good. So I'll try to keep this short and sweet. I haven't been out all that long, just a few years, so this is a different contrast, and maybe this will be more interesting. You're welcome, Max. This will be an interesting thing. So just a quick rundown. I was born in Wisconsin to a pretty conservative family, Roman Catholic, which they're still Roman Catholic, and good for them, it works for them. And so it was very strict binary, very strict gender roles, very strict, everything was very, there's a way to do things and a way to not do things on every level. And so I kind of grew up pretty angry, and sort of like I can relate to what Max has said, that I didn't know until somebody told me that I wasn't a boy. And then they told me, and I'm like, surely they're mistaken, and then puberty happened, and I'm like, oh, really? That sucks. So, you know, my mom came, and she's like, and now you're a young woman, and you can find a man, and you're going to have his babies. And there's something deep down inside me that cried out, like, that I won't, you know? And because for me, I've never had that desire. That's just not ever been a thing for me. It didn't make sense. That might make sense for some people. For me, it didn't make any sense. So, grew up hating authority and naturally joined the Navy, and did an enlistment, saw the world. When I got out, I tried to become Roman Catholic. I didn't go through it as a kid. And I wasn't wanting to admit that I tried to bury down my gender. You know, like I knew I couldn't actually talk about it. When I was younger, it was pretty obvious there's certain things that just are not said or admitted. So I was like, yeah, this is one of them. So I decided to be the best woman I could based on a pure stereotype. Just, I went as far as I could with it, so I figured there's nothing more feminine than a cloistered nun. So, in my opinion, you know, at that point, trying to play the game, trying to do everything, so I knew how to say what I had to say, and I served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So, in the military, I knew how to say what I had to say, the way I had to say it, to the people I had to say it to therapists, to doctors, to whatever. I knew how to play the game. And I did. So I became Roman Catholic, and a year and a half later tried to join, they're called Trappistines, cloistered nuns. Lasted 6 months, and they're like, yeah, you probably don't belong here. Yeah, probably not. And so then 2 weeks after I left, I went ahead and just got married to some guy. I'm attracted to women, always have been. But see, from my family of origin, women had to marry men. That's just how that worked. That's that binary I was raised in. So I stayed married for 12 years. And during that 12 years, used as many drugs as I could to stay alive. Literally, I just was miserable. Got over like 300 pounds. And I didn't buy off the street, because, you know, if I did that, I'd be an addict. So I went ahead and, you know, went to doctors, because that's more legitimate, and drank lots of alcohol. And for me, my faith is still important. I'm not Roman Catholic anymore, but I am Catholic in a different jurisdiction. So for me, my faith has kept me alive in that, my understanding. You know, I got red flagged by the pharmacy, and they said you can't get it from all these different doctors and blah, blah, blah. At the time I was in Michigan, so I was doctor shopping to hide my gender, right, from myself. In Michigan, Ohio, and Illinois at the VA and civilian hospitals, and doing anything I could to either get drugs or kill myself. So throwing myself downstairs, you know, I perforated my uterus with a coat hanger, you know, whatever I had to do to make this not be my reality. I went ahead and did it instead of just getting honest, but I was told that this didn't exist. In my mind, it didn't. I was told this didn't exist. So right around 2013, when I got clean, and went through detox and all that, I filed for a divorce because I couldn't be married and clean at the same time. One of those had to go away. So the marriage went away. And he lost his using partner. That first year, I realized I couldn't hide from my gender anymore. I can't pretend it doesn't exist. So I started looking for Googling. Can girls be boys? That was my first Google search in 2014 at this point. Can girls be boys? I was sheltered. I didn't watch TV by choice. You know, I was like really off in this weird deep end of religiosity and hiding and running and sick thinking and all this stuff. So I had myself on this real sick, sheltered sort of schedule where all I did was pray and, you know, hope that this all went away and I would be normal. Because I didn't yet know I was normal, is the thing. So came across this thing about trans men. And I knew about transgender, but to me transgender was trans women. That's all that meant. I had never really known anything about trans men, so I started looking into it. And I had gotten back into therapy, so I brought it up, and they were like, oh yeah, that's a thing. You want to talk about it? I'm like, are we allowed? Like, will I get put in the hospital? And he was like, why would I put you in the hospital for that? What? Because it's a mental illness. And I'm like, no, it's not. And so he educated me, and through that, finally got to a point where he's like, well, if you want to start going from there, we can look at social transition, hormones, or whatever. And at this point, I'm living in Virginia with my mom as I'm doing my social transition without actually telling her. So a year after my social transition, we're at an IHOP because I thought neutral ground is a good place to start. So over coffee and waffles, I'm like, so I'm transgender and I'm a guy. Do you want some more coffee, Mom? That's how that went. And she's like, we were never discussing this again. I'm like, bet. Do you want some more waffles? Long story short, I ended up leaving Virginia. It wasn't safe. The South is not a safe place necessarily to come out for as anything. So I made my way this way. Ended up in Las Cruces. And within a month, about a couple of years ago, within a month I had a job, you know, had an apartment. Things were coming together. Found a place that I can practice my spirituality and I feel comfortable and I'm welcome. And looking at where I came from to where I am now, I can't believe I'm alive, and I'm so grateful. Because I tried very hard to kill myself, and now that I have a reason to live, I don't want to bargain any minute of my life that I have left now. I enjoy my life. And somebody asked about voice changes. I think it was Jonie. I used to sound like a hyper chipmunk, and now I recognize my voice. And I think that's something for me, it's deepened where it makes sense to me. It always was something that I felt was wrong with my voice. I have, so my dysphoria comes out in various places. Height, my hands are small, my voice still sounds too high, you know, my beard isn't coming in fast enough. All of these things are in my perception, is the thing. And I'm now to a point where I can look back and realize I've always been male, like always. It doesn't matter what my genetics may or may not say. It doesn't really matter what may or may not be in my pants. It doesn't matter. I've always identified as male. That's all there is. But my dysphoria comes out in telling me that it doesn't match what other people say, or it doesn't match what I think it needs to look like. Well, I just look the way I look. I just sound the way I sound, and it just is what it is. So practicing that level of acceptance is challenging for me, but that's what helps me get past my dysphoria more than anything else. I have had top surgery, and I am on hormones. One day I would like to get bottom surgery, but that's expensive, and it is what it is. And I'm 42, so yeah, and I'm still in grad school, so I don't really have time or money for all that yet, so we'll see. But that's all I have, really. Do you have any questions?
One comment, I met someone that, I met recently a trans woman, and she went to Thailand, and she told me it cost $10,000.
Yes, medical
Yeah.
medical tourism. Yes, I'm looking into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I also have another question.
Sure.
When you started taking hormones, did that change your personality?
That's a good question. No, I'm still the same person I was. However, this is interesting. Um, so the emotions that used to be at the front are more on the back burner now. I'm more focused, I guess. I don't know how to explain that. I'm calmer. I'm not nearly as angry, and I was actually afraid that I'd be more angry because I always heard that I would be. I'm actually way more calm. It's a lot harder to get me angry now, maybe because I'm more comfortable with myself. But what's really interesting, I've been a medical assistant for 20 years, and now I'm transferring over to psychology and whatever. So I teach medical assisting because about 8 months into hormones, the sight of blood made me nauseous. That was never a thing for me, and now I'm like, oh my God, people are suffering, which is so weird because I always thought, I was raised to believe that men are supposed to be these cold, callous creatures that nothing phases them, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, please don't cry. I don't know when that, maybe it's just my true self or whatever, but that's changed. When I was a woman, whatever, blood didn't faze me, suffering didn't really faze me that much, and now I'm squeamish. So that's changed. That's weird.
It just occurred to me that I wanted to ask both of you, because the many years in between your trans experiences, have you been able to successfully change all of your documents and paperwork, and was it harder back then? Is it easier now?
It actually was easier for me.
Was it?
Because I just went to the driver's license bureau and said, you guys made a mistake on my driver's license here. So they just changed it. And then my birth certificate, I did have a lawyer do that.
Okay.
And the lawyer took care of that. And so for me, that was that simple. For them, I'll let Caleb fill you in on all that has to go on now.
So most of my documentation has changed. I'm from Wisconsin, so I can't get my birth certificate changed until I get bottom surgery, and basically they want, pics or something, I don't know. And then I can only get it amended, so it'll never actually be fully changed. But I can't do that right now. I had my name change happened in Virginia. So Wisconsin requires a form for their courts to be signed by the people that approve my name and gender change. But Virginia won't do it because they didn't approve the gender change, so they can do the name, but the birth certificate won't honor that. So, but meanwhile, my discharge papers have my legal name and gender, and my social security card has my legal name. I'm still working on the gender there. My driver's license, everything, literally everything except my birth certificate at this point has my legal name. And because my birth certificate doesn't have my legal gender, there's a couple other things that don't, but
Passport. I
I don't have a passport. I've gotten calm now. I don't want to travel anymore. I'm so done with adventure. I'm just a homebody. I don't even have a passport.
That's a point that with this to make. If you are in a state where they only amend and not change your birth certificate, take your amended birth certificate, get your passport, and from then on use your passport, and then there's no embarrassment. They always accept the passport as well, or at least so far that's my experience.
And this is why I keep him around. This is why he's here. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned that you're an ex-Roman Catholic, but you're still a Christian.
I'm still Catholic. I'm just not Roman.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of several other Catholic denominations.
Tons, yes.
What?
There's tons, yeah.
Really?
Tons. Oh, God.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
There's a flavor for everybody.
I don't know how to say this.
Just
It seems like in this country, maybe not all countries, but the biggest problem we're facing right now is with so-called Christians, including your former denomination, the Roman Catholics, the Southern Baptists, these are really major denominations. Do you see there's an antidote to that within your faith?
The gospel.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The actual faith of it, yeah.
Yes.
That's the antidote. Because here's the parish I go to, we're not Roman Catholic. We are national, but we're not Roman. We're American National Catholic. And everybody's welcome. It's all inclusive, right? We don't withhold anybody from doing anything. It's not our business, really. Our business is telling people that they're loved and cared for and Jesus loves them. But I would say, I'm not clergy, and I don't speak on behalf of my church. So on my behalf of my belief and my understanding of it, the antidote is being a Christian. So sometimes that means I got to take some hits, though. And that's been true in my church because I'm the only trans person there. So there was a learning curve. Even though my pastor and his husband have been together for 42 years, they had no idea what trans was. They had some inklings, but of course that came from, I don't know, whatever area they came from. So I've had to take some hits to then open that door so they could be educated in a loving manner. But at the same time, some people can't be educated because they're not open-minded. And I'm not going to waste my time on that. You know, I'll knock the dust off my boots and keep it moving and just trust that, in my opinion, the Holy Spirit will come through and do whatever the Holy Spirit does. I can't be all to everyone. I just can't. So I pray for people, I do what I can. I will share my experience as a Catholic and as a Christian. I'm made exactly the way I was supposed to be. I don't know what to tell you. God doesn't screw up. He doesn't accidentally stumble into things, you know. So that's what I tell people. Things don't accidentally occur, in my belief. But I can't say why we're here. I can't say why I'm transgender. I can't say why any of this happened. It's not my business. My business is to love people and to be as accepting as I can, even if they don't love me back. And that's, I think, where the breakdown happens with, in my opinion, the mainstream whatever is when I start looking for social acceptability and I start looking for like personal justification and stuff, and I'm wanting to like judge and separate and divide. I'm not going to get any love back. I got to get what I put out, and sometimes I won't get it back from the people I want it, and that's just how it goes. I don't know. I hope that made sense.
A comment and a question. Even Paul could not be all things to all people, though he wanted to be and thought he was. And the question is that the American National Catholic Church?
What do you mean?
Oh, your Catholic church, is it called the American National Catholic Church?
Yes, that's the one I go to. Yeah, not my church, but it's the one I go to. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else?
And in Las Cruces, there are many, many churches that are open to everyone. Peace Lutheran and, gosh, I wish I could remember the name of the Unitarian. And so there are, at least here.
All right, if nobody else has any other questions for Max and Caleb, we want to thank you for being here. We understand you have a 2-hour ride back, so thank you for making the trek out. We really, really appreciate it. Without further ado, we want to introduce Susan Golightly, who will provide a very brief Trans 101.
Thank you. Time for, is it on? I don't hear it. Okay. Is it on? Okay, water first.
Call first, please.
Just one other thing, if you have any other questions, please channel them to Jonie. She'll get them to us. We'll get it back to you. Okay?
Thank you very much for coming. It's a long drive, I know, and we really appreciate hearing from, especially in Silver City, from trans people other than me. Okay, I'm going to do a very quick Trans 101, and I'm starting. In fact, that's the transgender symbol. You know, the male, the female, and sort of both. There. Did you do it or did I do it? I did it. Oh, let me see if it's working. Here, let me give this to you and you get it to. It worked. Oh, it worked. Okay. Okay. I want it to work. So, no, he has to do something up there. But, okay, is it working now? Oh, point it that way. Oh, okay. Okay, it's working. Okay, I had some, like a tragedy in the family, and I'm kind of dealing with it, so I started getting angry about things that affect our lives. So I want to start out with something that really does affect our lives. And this is Bell Hooks is an amazing writer. She always uses lowercase letters, and she's a strong feminist and just somebody worth reading. And she wrote, "We have to constantly critique imperialist whites, supremacist patriarchal culture because it is normalized by mass media and rendered unproblematic." So the reason I have a problem, the reason all the other minorities have problems, is because if the dominant white male patriarchy could have and keep us divided, then we will struggle amongst ourselves, and we'll spend our energy doing that instead of trying to create a true democracy and a world where people can accept and love one another. So that's the root. It's nothing to do with Trans 101. That's just the root of why I have to be up here and talk about Trans 101 instead of just being accepted as a person. And then Sojourner Truth, I hope you've all heard of Sojourner Truth, an amazing, wonderful woman, and she attended a women's convention, and I put in there parentheses, white women. So she attended the convention and said, and wrote this essay, "Ain't I a Woman?" It's the best essay I think any of us could read. And so I like it because I'm going to look at you and say, ain't I a woman? My background is different, my struggle is different, but I'm not a man, and there's nothing male about me. So I just wanted a little frustration. Okay, my favorite quote: when scientific theory says something's wrong with so many people, perhaps the theory is wrong, not the people. Love that. Joan Roughgarden's a professor of genetics at Stanford University. She wrote a wonderful book, Evolution's Rainbow. Okay, now Trans 101. The Williams Institute just recently came out with a figure. Approximately 1.4 million individuals in the U.S., about 0.6%, are transgender. And if you add that to, just recently they added to it the transgender people from the ages 13 to 17, another 150,000. So we're looking about 1 in 200 are transgender. So if we think of 1 in 200, there's 10,000 people in Silver City. So there should be 50 trans people here. And if it's, in all of Grant County, it should be 150 trans people. I know about 10. So trans people are still in the closet, still in denial, still hiding, and still having a difficult time coming out. And that's changing, because you could go on to any show almost on TV, they'll have the token trans character, or somebody like Oprah Winfrey would do a very sensitive interview with trans people, and so people are beginning to know. When I started, I'm 74, so I started a long time ago and nobody had ever heard of the word transgender. So here's the thing. You notice the 4 of us were fairly old. The one person with a broken ankle in my mind is quite young, but he's still in his 40s. So young people are not having a struggle. young people know all about trans right off the bat. They Google things, they study it and everything, and they start transitioning and you never hear about them. And that is wonderful, and that's the way we want it to be. But it's us who've grown up under an oppressive society that persecutes anything that's different. We struggled and we had internal self-hatred. I used to call it the freak factor, my internal freak factor. So there's a word now being bandied about called cisgender. And people say, well, I'm not cisgender, I'm just normal. You know, I'm who I was. I was assigned male or female at birth. I'm comfortable with that. And so you're the ones who are transgender. But that's what they said in the 90s about when we started calling people heterosexual. And they went, I'm not heterosexual. I'm normal. You guys are homosexual. So we finally got people to accept that you could be heterosexual or homosexual. Actually, you could be all kinds of things. You could be pansexual, you could be asexual, you could be, I'll show you later, you could be a lot of things. So, but anyway, cis comes from a Latin word. It means staying on the side you're on. It actually comes from chemistry, meaning not crossing over. Trans means, of course, crossing. So we use the word cisgender. If you were assigned male or female at birth and you're comfortable with that, you grow up comfortable with that, then you're cisgendered or cissexual. Oh, you're good that way. So here's some words. Kind of important words in dealing with transgender issues. And let me clarify something. We use the word sex and gender, and they tend to be conflated all the time. So most people just give up. I used to be a real stickler and say, sex is our body morphology. It's our sexual characteristics, our secondary sexual characteristics, and gender is how we perform that. Gender is how we it's the attribute we'd like to see ourselves, and it's how we get, receive our attribution. And so, but now it just keeps getting conflated, so I conflate it now. So, heteronormativity, that means people who are heterosexual and they think it's the only way to be, and being heterosexual is normal. And they look at the world through a lens that sees anything that's outside of heterosexual normativity as being deviant instead of a variant. You know, the DSM still uses the word DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, still uses the term deviant rather than a variant of human behavior. So gender binary, the young man here mentioned gender binary. Gender binary means male, female, man, woman. It's a binary. We know that the majority of people are comfortable in the gender binary, but it's only one way to be. There's plenty of people that identify as non-binary, asexual, and aromantic. All kinds of ways you could be outside of, some people identify, in many countries they have a third gender. So the binary is kind of getting to be a little, to think only in terms of binaryism is getting to be kind of old. Gender essentialism is still hugely used by many, many people. It mainly is, when you get assigned male or female, that's who you are. Essentialism will say you cannot change that. Essentialism says that your body characteristics is set in stone. If you're a woman, you like to be barefoot in the kitchen and sew a knit, and if you're a man, you want to go out and shoot things. I'm just putting it, being facetious. Okay, but anyway, that's essentialism, and we know in our own experience that very few people fit those stereotypical roles. Some do because they try hard and they strive to fit those roles so they could feel they're normal. I did for a lot of my life, tried very hard to be a guy, and it just didn't take. And so, but I tried. And so then, so in other words, gender essentialism wrongly posits that women and men are inherently different and therefore should be treated accordingly by society. And that's pushed all the way through school, from elementary school, actually from before a baby's born, they paint the room pink or blue. If you go up to Walmart, you got a whole aisle of pink. That's for girls. So it's conditioning them and socializing them. You got another aisle that's filled with bazookas and AR-15s or plastic, but you know what I mean, and G.I. Joes and tanks and all kinds of stuff. And that's for the boys. And it's like clear as, you know, just go one to the other, walk back and forth, and it's an education. And we wonder why things in our society happen like they do. We wonder why every single mass shooter in this country has been male. So we wonder why. Okay. I put this in the bottom, this little note, 47.6% of women choose not to have kids. That's U.S. Census Bureau, I didn't make it up. That's something that the patriarchy, the dominant male society, does not want us to think about, because we want to keep women thinking that they're not as capable of doing things as men. They're not, you know, the person we want to hire for careers. We, you know, the Fortune 500, right? How many women are in the Fortune 500 CEOs? 10. So 500, 10. 5. So 490 are men, 10 are women. And those women, let me tell you, are people to reckon with. And so, anyway, so almost half of women choose not to be mothers because they want to have a career, they want to do the things, they want to be in the military, they want to jump out of airplanes, they want to be fire people and or whatever, you know. So we have to rethink the gender binary that we have in our head. Part of that binary is how we assign roles. And so we need to rethink. I was doing a support group where I had 3 young people. I had no idea what their assigned sex was. I mean, that's the sex that the doctor said, oh, look, it's a boy or it's a girl. So here they are, they're 17, 18, 19, right in there. I had no idea. And at first I found it very uncomfortable because the first thing we ask is it a boy or a girl? The first thing we do is give an attribute to the person we're talking with, you know, so we know. So here's these people, and at first it was very uncomfortable for me, but I actually refused to ask them. And they would have told me, because I was the leader of the group and all that. And I didn't ask, and it took several months. It took a while. And then I began to enjoy the fact that I didn't know, because and it caused me to listen more closely to what they had to say, because I couldn't make assumptions about who they are. And it was cool, because then I really realized when they had something to say, I had to listen, and it was good. So anyway, let's go on. So here's the problem, and now I'm being humorous. So this is the problem, assigned gender roles. And we all know this little nursery rhyme, you know, boys are made out of snips and snails and puppy dog tails, and girls are sugars and spice and all things nice. You know, girls are pink, boys are blue. Do you realize before 1920 it was reversed? People were so conditioned to think how things are have always been. The reason it was reversed because red is the color of Mars, red is for war, red is masculine, red is like tough. Pink was the light color of red, and boys start out pink and they're going to get more red as they get older. and then it got reversed. I don't know why. Same with Republicans and Democrats. At one time, the Democrats were red and the Republicans 1962. They switched it, and the Democrats became, blue. But we all think it was always that way. So we think how men and women behave today, they have always behaved that way. And it's not so. So let's go on. So I'm going to talk about something very interesting about trans people. This is the limbic system. It's in our brain, right in the center of our brain. If you go like this, you can kind of feel where your limbic system is. Is your thumb, put it here, and wrap around your cerebral cortex. It'll actually make you feel calm. Babies do it all the time because it's symbolic of how we're protecting the seat of our emotions. And so the limbic system is concerned with instinct and mood, with our basic emotions, and our hunger, sex, dominance, and care of offspring. So that's interesting, right? So what's interesting? Oh, I have a pointer. See this? The striae terminalis. It points to this thing that wraps all around, and that's the pathway of communication from our limbic system into the cortex where we do our thinking. That pathway is sexually dimorphic. And they did a study. Here they are. Okay, they did a study in Norway, and they dissected women and men that are assigned male and female at birth. And this is, oops, wait a minute. Wait, stop, go back. Okay, there it is. Okay, that's male, that's female. Those were, males and females assigned at birth. This is a trans male, that's a trans female. Every single one was that way. It was a small study. They did controls, like men who had testicular cancer, who were taking estrogen to control that, still had the male size, and the trans women had the male size. So that's a pretty good indicator that there's another, and the brain trumps the body every time. So if a doctor looked at me when I was born, the doctor said, "Oh, that's a boy." Well, the doctor didn't look inside my limbic system and all those pathways and see how that maybe there is something else working. And so all transgender people have this variance. Okay, just interesting. It's a small study. It hasn't been replicated, but it was done by very, very credible people. And so the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, still has a problem with the people being transgender. They call it, dysphoria, sexual dysphoria, and so on. Well, to be a mental illness, you have to have dysfunction. You have to have stress from who you are, not from what's caused from the outside. So right here it says, a socially deviant behavior, example, political, religious, sexual, and conflicts that are primarily between individuals and society are not disorders. Because I said that I was not a man, that I felt I was, female, I was diagnosed as having a disorder. And I had to accept that diagnosis because otherwise I couldn't get hormones, I couldn't get approved for surgery, I couldn't get a letter from a doctor, and this was years ago, and so I had to go through all of that. Nowadays, in many parts of the country, a person could go and have necessary surgery or necessary hormone replacement therapy, they call it, on their own recognizance or on their own responsibility. So we are making some improvements. So here you go. this is the vocabulary of people struggling for identity. When I looked at this, I knew every word here. I knew them all because I have been struggling for identity for many, many years. And so people that are doing that, I mean, let's take people that started out, they used the word in the black community, were Negro, then colored people, and then black people, and now people of color, and so on, and they're trying to find words they feel comfortable with and they could identify with. That's what's going on here. People are really, really trying to find out what's going on. And so, now, this is Transgender 101. Subcultures. Those are all various subcultures. Bicycling, the hunting club, the people that, are into the theater community or anything. We all have like things we identify with, we take part in. Those are like subcultures. The bicycles, bikers, heavy leather bikers, were tough guys. And, but two things in here, kind of hidden, are not a subculture. People end up with those two things because they have no choice. It's kind of forced onto them, so let's see what they are. So, oops, I pushed the wrong button. Okay, there. The lesbian and gay community. Everybody talks about gay ghettos and things. Do you think gay people choose to be in a gay ghetto? And do you think they choose to have their own community, or are they forced into that community by a world that does not accept them? And so they may be in a gay and lesbian community, but they would like to be just seen as people and be like everybody else, even though we all like our orientation. And I could talk to you about orientation. I've had lots of them. So, and then the other one is up here, trans community. People are born trans. They don't choose to be trans. It's not a preference. Like being gay is not a preference. Nobody said, oh, I think I'll choose to be gay today. It doesn't work that way. You grow up, and I, at the age of 12, started looking at guys and going, whoa. And I would get, and because guys are hot. So, so anyway, but everything else, you have a choice. It's a lifestyle or it's a subculture. But being trans or being in the LGBTQ community is not a choice. So we say LGB, lesbian, gay, bi, and then we added the T, LGBT for transgender or transsexual or two-spirited. And the T was added, and I know a lot of gay people say, well, why is the T there? Because we're all persecuted together. In fact, most of the straight community sees trans people as some extreme form of being gay. And so anyway, so then we have LGBTQI. Well, Q to me is queer, and some people call it questioning, but I like queer, and queer is what I describe myself as. I is for intersex. Intersex means you had some problems with either your physical or your genetic, you had some ambiguity. Some women are born with, or some men are born with androgen insensitivity syndrome. They call it AIS. Their body has no receptors for testosterone, so they remain female. All fetuses are female. That's why it's actually only it's very relatively inexpensive to go from male to female. To go the other way around from female to male is very difficult because it's going in against the natural process. It's easy to make a vagina out of a penis, but it's very hard to make a penis out of a vagina. In fact, it's almost impossible. And then in Canada, they like to put everything together: lesbian, gay, bi, trans, transgender, transsexual, two-spirited, questioning, queer, intersex, androgynous, and ally.
And asexual.
Asexual, it could be asexual. We need to add another A. And then we have GSM, which I think it's easier. That's gender and sexual minorities, which I think is really cool. And then queer. Queer is good too, but some people are uncomfortable with it because when we go back about 30 years, queer was a pejorative term. So there's sexual orientations. That's just a little fraction of them. Lesbian, gay, bi, asexual, pansexual. Pansexual is sort of replacing bisexual because there's a lot of variation. I like to interpret pansexual. If it moves, I could probably get interested. And then polyamory means that more than two people could be in love together. You could have a community, a marriage of 3 or 4 people or more. And aromantic, they just don't feel romantic towards people. And so let's go down here to so transgender and queer umbrella terms, and we have transsexual, transgender, and some people say trans. Some people put an asterisk after trans, which means that it's in their mind they see it as more inclusive, but the asterisk seems to be going away. And then a trans man, we just heard from 2 trans men, and then trans women, that would be me in a way, though I tend to identify as genderqueer. And then people use the expression F to M and M to F. So these are non-binary terms because we talked about the binary, so ways of identifying as non-binary is genderqueer, gender bender. That's a polite word to say gender, F-U-C-K, gender. And which it means that you like dressing like a girl, but you keep your beard, or you like being really butch, but you still keep your boobs. And so anything that sort of causes other people to not quite get what your gender is. They have a gender struggle. And so gender fluid is a similar thing, going back and forth. Polygender is like people that they're comfortable going both ways. Some weeks, some months, some days, they feel like presenting as a guy, and sometimes they present as a woman. And agender means they don't identify as gender at all. Gender's outside their purview, so to speak. I like that one very much. Neutral is just simply another word for being genderqueer, so people like it. Androgynous is sort of a gender term. They like being seen as in between, a little bit of both. And then androgyne is similar to androgynous, another variation. Okay, then I put the word intersex here because these are kind of outside, sort of the transgender umbrella. And that's the word intersex. There it is, intersex. Intersex, I mentioned it a little bit. People are born with ambiguous genitalia or some difficulty, or they could be XXY, they could be XYY. They can have Klinefelters, which is mosaic patterns of their sexual chromosomes, or they could have hypospadia, where the opening to the urethra is at the base of the penis. There's quite a few different ones. I was born intersex. My testicles are up inside my body. My inguinal canals were not formed. And it took many operations for them to get my testicles where they're supposed to be. And at the age of 3 and 4, it was not fun. And that happens. People that have hypospadia, there's nothing wrong with them at all, other than they have to sit to pee. I know people that have had that, and they've undergone as many as 15 operations to try to stretch the urethra to the end of the penis, and if they get an erection, they have severe pain. And this is because we want to normalize everything, and we can't handle somebody that isn't, you know, textbook. And so I have friends that had hypospadia, and it's one of the worst. Intersex, there's a lot. There's the Intersex Society of North America. If you have any interest in it, please look that up. There's a wonderful book, and the name popped out of my head. But anyway, go to the Intersex Society of North America. And okay, drag queens and cross-dressers. Why are they in their own little box? Because they choose to be. Some choose to be under the trans umbrella, some choose not to be. I was a drag queen for many years in Boston. I always was a cross-dresser, probably from the age of 8 or 9, wearing my mother's clothes anytime I could, whenever possible. And I would get all dressed. I was a latchkey kid, so everybody's out of the house. I would get all dressed up and pretend I was the woman of the house and have nothing to do but sit around and pretend I was the mom. And so anyway, so we have Two-Spirit, Hydra, and Katoi. So Two-Spirit is a term that Native Americans use. It's been co-opted in a sense. It's been used by white people and non-Native Americans because it is very descriptive, but they claim that term, and it is their term, and it's their right to have that term, and so I don't ever use that term. And because it means something spiritual, it means something personal with them and the culture that they are part of. And it's not for me to appropriate it and use it for my own ends. Hydra are my favorite people. If I'd grown up in India, I would have run away and joined the Hydra. They identify as third gender. They just went to court. They had this big thing that happened a couple of years back, and now they actually have their driver's license as third gender. Okay, almost done. And so I thought if I had been born in India, I would have ran away and joined the Hydra. There's approximately 1 million Hydra in India. So that's where we could get a good count of how many trans people there are. And Katoi are the ones in Thailand. They do these shows and things that are pretty amazing. And then I put furries there just for the fun of it, because it's a little subculture of people who love dressing as animals and playing and pretending they're animals, and I just love the furries. Not a furry, but I think they're great. So, and that's it. If you have any questions, you could ask later. I think Lydia wants to move on. Dr. Huerta. Dr. Huerta wants to move on.
Not so much moving on as trying to make sure people have time to process all this information, which is great. Thank you, Susan. I really appreciate it. We're going to have a brief reading of a book called I Am Jazz, which was written, as Susan said, by a young woman who transitioned at a very young age, and one of the student coordinators at the center has been gracious enough to do the reading for you all. Then after that, we'll have a panel with Susan and Jonie K. Rose, Davey from PFLAG, and Ted from LGBT Grant County. But for now, Zach, show's yours. So Zach.
Sure. So this is I Am Jazz by Jessica Herthel and Jazz Jennings. I am jazz. For as long as I can remember, my favorite color has been pink. My second favorite color is silver, and my third favorite color is green. Here are some of my other favorite things: dancing, singing, backflips, drawing, soccer, swimming, makeup, and pretending I'm a pop star. Most of all, I love mermaids. Sometimes I even wear a mermaid tail in the pool. My best friends are Samantha and Casey. We always have fun together. We like high heels and princess gowns, or cartwheels and trampolines. But I'm not exactly like Samantha and Casey. I have a girl brain, but a boy body. This is called transgender. I was born this way. When I was very little and my mom would say, "You're such a good boy," I would say, "No, Mama, good girl." At first, my family was confused. They'd always thought of me as a boy. As I got a little older, I hardly ever played with trucks or tools or superheroes, only princesses in mermaid costumes. My brothers told me this was girl stuff. I kept right on playing. My sister says I was always talking to her about my girl thoughts and my girl dreams and how one day I would be a beautiful lady. She would giggle and say, "You're a funny kid." Sometimes my parents let me wear my sister's dresses around the house, but whenever we went out, I had to put on my boy clothes again. This made me mad. Still, I never gave up on trying to convince them. Pretending I was a boy felt like telling a lie. Then one amazing day, everything changed. Mom and Dad took me to meet a new doctor who asked me lots and lots of questions. Afterward, the doctor spoke to my parents and I heard the word transgender for the very first time. That night at bedtime, my parents both hugged me and said, "We understand now. Be who you are. We love you no matter what." This made me smile and smile and smile. Mom and Dad told me I could start wearing girl clothes to school and growing my hair long. They even let me change my name to Jazz. Being Jazz felt much more like being me. Mom said that being Jazz would make me different from the other kids at school, but that being different is okay. What's important, she said, is that I'm happy with who I am. Being Jazz caused some other people to be confused too, like the teachers at school. At the beginning of the year, they wanted me to use the boys' bathroom and play on the boys' teams in gym class, but that didn't feel normal to me at all. I was so happy when the teachers changed their minds. I can't imagine not playing on the same team as Casey and Samantha. Even today, there are kids who tease me or call me by my boy name or ignore me altogether. This makes me feel crummy. Then I remember that the kids who get to know me usually want to be my friend. They say I'm one of the nicest girls at school. I don't mind being different. Different is special. I think what matters most is what a person is like inside. And inside, I am happy, I am having fun. I am proud. I am Jazz.
Thank you, Zach. So we do have this book on display at the Center for Gender Equity and Social Justice, and it's also here at the library. I also wanted to let you all know that we will be taking extensive questions after this panel. So without further ado, I would like to invite Jonie K. Rose, Susan Golightly, Damie Nelson, and Ted Tufers to join us on the panel up here. Thank you. So when we were thinking about what this panel could be about, we decided it would probably be a really good idea for Susan and Jonie to tell their stories, and then also allow for Ted and Damie to give some time as to how PFLAG and LGBT Grand County serve the trans community. So Susan, do you want to start?
Okay. Am I live? Can you hear me? Okay, all right. I wish I'd brought pictures. I didn't think about it. I've been kind of discombobulated lately. But as early as I can remember, I was wearing my mother's clothes. I grew up, I didn't have sisters. And so I always knew something was wrong. And then when I became in adolescent, I discovered I was attracted to men, and then I knew that was wrong. I mean, the kids was like, I was in Boy Scouts, and the kids would be looking at Playboy magazines. They'd sneak them into our camp in the tent with flashlights. Everybody looking at Playboy. So I'd go back later to my room or where I was alone, and then I would try to get into the poses the girls were in, because I thought they looked so cool. But anyway, so I, at a fairly early, I guess I was about 18, something like that, I was aware that I was gay, started having gay relationships. I had very mixed feelings, a lot of internal, remember I grew up in the 40s and 50s, you know, let's say, you know, somebody that was born during World War II. So I never heard of anybody like me. I didn't know there was anybody like me. I did hear of Christine Jorgensen. She made the news. I was afraid to read about it. I didn't want to look at her. It just terrified me, the whole idea, because I knew that something there was going to affect me. So I got married and divorced, the first didn't take really, so that was very short. But my second wife, we were together for quite a while. She left me when she discovered me wearing her clothes. Couldn't help it. So then in Boston, I became a drag queen. I founded the Gay Men's Center in Boston. I was pretty happy being a gay guy and almost scratched the itch. As a feminine gay guy, I could, you know, hang out, wiggle my tush, the guys would all respond, and my relationship with guys was kind of almost perfect. It just was not me. And so I transitioned then. Actually, all my drag queen friends said, you know, you're really different than us. And I started seeing a therapist. This is about 1975. And I started taking hormones and transitioned and was working full-time at Saks Avenue in Boston as a woman. And I knew no other people. I lost my gay community. I lost my friends. I had nobody to, I wasn't understood. I didn't understand myself. I didn't quite know where I was going or what I was doing. I didn't think I had a future. So I contemplated quite seriously suicide. And a figure I didn't mention, 42% of trans people have attempted suicide. That's almost half. That's because gender identity, sexual identity is the core of our being. And when that does not align with our body and with our socialization, then there's nowhere to go. I mean, so support groups are hugely important. So anyway, I didn't commit suicide, very fortunately, because of some people that helped, and I ran away from the whole thing. I got married my current ex-wife. We were together almost 30 years, 28 years. Had 3 beautiful daughters. Just recently I lost my youngest daughter. But anyway, we separated. My kids and my ex-wife were very supportive. We're still very close. My youngest daughter, right off the bat, thought it was cool. When she was working at Penny's in Albuquerque, and I went to see her, and she just couldn't wait to introduce me to all of her friends as her dad. And I was dressed, skirt and everything. You know, when you're newly come out as trans, you look like June Cleaver, you know. And, so, well, you just don't know how to do it, you know. So anyway, but anyway, she was very proud of me, and she said, "Hey, this is my dad." You know, I mean, she was so cool, and I loved being her dad, and I'll always be her dad. And I'm the dad of my other 2 daughters. And though I'm trans and I'm not a man, I'm their dad. I raised them. And, so that's kind of, in a nutshell, where I'm at. I've spent a lot of my, you know, went to Western. I got an interdisciplinary master's in counseling and gender studies, and I spend a lot of time doing support groups and for transgender people. I do a lot of writing, and I've never been happier being who I am. I have never looked back.
Thank you, Susan.
Johnny, I think the best way I can introduce myself is to read a few poems. And this one is particularly poignant, even though our friends have departed. It's called Trans Brother. In the still night, in the dark night, furtively I reach out, feeling behind the auto parts and sports logos, blindly groping until I find the secret exit. Desperately I reach out, pushing until the cold steel bars give way. Now I realize my cell was never locked, only fear has kept me there. In the still night, in the dark night, I slip out unobserved, fearfully glancing around me, walking awkwardly at first, high heels clicking on the cold gray stone. With every step I look around, fearful of being watched. Yet no one notices. Does my makeup make me invisible? In the still night, in the dark night, I see you, oh my brother, coming toward me, your young face blossoming with your first growth of whiskers, your manly swagger masking perhaps a fear much like my own. In my heels, I tower over you, yet in my heart I fear your manly strength. Yet when I look into your eyes, I know that you at least can see me. In the still night, in the dark night, I watch you. Over my shoulder, I watch you, walking manfully toward my old, abandoned cell. My lips open to cry out a warning, to tell you it's a trap. You must not go there. Yet the words catch in my throat, and no sound emerges as I watch you. Over my shoulder, I watch you, walking triumphantly into my former home. To me, a prison. To you, the promised land. In the still night, in the dark night, I turn back. In my clicking heels, I turn back and retrace my furtive footsteps. Back, 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 to seek for you. There is yet, after all, one more thing that I must do before I move on. In surprise, you turn to greet me as once again our eyes meet. Looking at you, I wonder, can we ever really understand? In the still night, in the dark night, I reach for you, feeling your ace bandage against my newly swelling breasts. As quaking in fear, we embrace one another, each failing to find words to express our confusion, yet knowing more than ever that we need one another. Once more our eyes meet, and now at last I see in you a mirror of myself. Here is another poem called Gender Dysphoria. Gender dysphoria? I have gender dysphoria? Oh, don't worry, it's not catching. But seriously, what is this work about my gender? I couldn't be more happy being the woman I am. A bit of a tomboy, perhaps. Certainly a strong-willed, independent woman. But is that unusual these days? Oh, I see. Gender dysphoria, the new sanitized version of gender identity disorder. It's like now I'm supposed to say I'm transgender rather than transsexual, so as to avoid that dirty little three-letter word. So at long last, they finally meant I don't have an identity disorder. Or do they? Maybe gender dysphoria is just a euphemism for gender identity disorder. It's still in the DSM after all, as though the problem is with me being who I am, not with society. No, my gender identity doesn't feel at all dysphoric to me, much less disordered. And who would know better? Born in the wrong body? Now, why is my body the problem? Where did it go wrong? Certainly not the same body I was born with anyway. No, I wasn't born a man, nor a woman either. We're all born as infants, remember? The man-woman business comes later over time. Oh, now I have the usual old lady complaints, stiff joints, arthritis so bad I can't play guitar anymore. Not to mention the perennial hot flashes. But that's hardly unusual, is it? No. My body isn't the problem, nor is my mind. I wasn't born in the wrong body, I was born in the wrong culture. An enlightened modern society obsessed with the infantile superstition that anatomy is destiny, that you just look at the few ounces of flesh between an infant's leg and it determines the person's lifelong identity. What oppressive rubbish! Native Americans and other so-called primitive tribespeople do better than that. It doesn't say any such thing in the Bible, nor in the Quran either, yet Christians and Muslims alike accept this childish superstition, while those who harbor petticoated pedophiles dare to judge us. Feminism from the start has proclaimed that anatomy is not destiny, that women are not born, but made, that all women must unite. Well, a few self-proclaimed radical feminists, radical right pseudo-feminists truly, now insist that after all, anatomy is destiny, that women are born, not made, while they turn women against women once again to make common cause with those religious fundamentalists in denying so many of us our human rights. The society I live in is gender dysphoric. The social order around me is afflicted with gender identity disorder. In a world where my most basic rights are daily being threatened, can I find the courage to simply live my truth as the woman I am meant to be? I think I've got a short verse from here because they often ask about regrets. Have I got any regrets? Yes, I regret that along with so many others, I had the misfortune to be born into a cruel society that routinely forces people from birth into little cages and confines us there, while ridiculing, abusing, persecuting, destroying those of us who try to break out of those cages and freely express our true identity and our innate creative nature. I likewise regret that I, along with so many others, tried for so many years, even decades, to fit into the straitjacket placed upon me. Especially I regret that at times during my youth, I even joined in persecuting others who were unable to conform to their own assigned roles in a desperate yet futile struggle to deflect attention from my own unsuccessful attempts to belong. I regret how long it took me to see the futility of that senseless game. I regret even more that long after I realized and even accepted that I was in no way who I'd been told I was supposed to be, and indeed realized that I could not fulfill that role with integrity. Still I persisted year after year, even decade after decade, to maintain the pretense by acting the role foisted upon me from birth, or shortly thereafter, as though my entire life were a charade, to be maintained no matter how dishonest and oppressive that role felt to me. I regret that so artfully, if awkwardly, did I at times try to fulfill my assigned role, that very nearly did I lose touch with my own true inner nature. Finally, I regret that I waited so very long before at last I determined that I could stay no longer within the confines of that dark cage. Before at long last I emerged into the sunlight as my own true self. So each of us has our own pathways. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at any point.
Thank you, Jonie. Do you all have any questions for Susan or Jonie at this point? Okay, Amy and Ted, thank you for being here. If you could speak to the resources available in their community for trans community members and people who are in transition. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Damie Nelson. I'm president of PFLAG Silver City. And back there on those tables are a bunch of our pamphlets and brochures from PFLAG. And the orange ones in particular are called our Trans Loved Ones. It's the thickest booklet we have because it's complicated. So help yourself. I've got more in the bag over here. Those are the ones, so take one of those. PFLAG started in 1972 with a simple act of a mother publicly supporting her gay son. And the acronym originally stood for Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. But as we all know now, there's a lot of other letters. And so a few years ago, PFLAG National decided to keep the acronym, but get rid of the tagline. So who knows, maybe someday they'll change the acronym. But PFLAG is an organization that started out as a lot of parents and grandparents of LGBTQ sons and daughters and grandchildren, but now it also includes lots of LGBTQ people themselves. In fact, our current national president is a lesbian woman. We are here in Silver City, a small town with our own chapter, which is amazing. There are many, many chapters of PFLAG throughout the country and in Puerto Rico. I forget what else, but it's getting more international. So anybody can be a member. We have lots of literature available. The PFLAG National website is a wealth of information for not only for PFLAG members, but for people that are just curious about learning. So you can go to pflag.org, and here our website locally is pflagsilver.org, and we're also on Facebook. And I just want to thank everybody in the audience and everybody up here for teaching me so much. I still have a lot to learn. And there's going to be many other occasions in my life when I'm going to have to apologize for using the wrong pronoun and things like that, but I'm getting better at that. So thank you for your patience and keep teaching us.
Thank you, Damie. Ted?
My name is Ted. I'm president of LGBT Grant County, and Lydia, you're in trouble because I didn't know I was going to be on this panel until like 2 minutes ago, which is Lydia's famous for. But that's okay. LGBT Grant County has been here for a long time, almost 20 years. It started out as SWANS, which was Southwest Network Activities Society, and if that doesn't sound gay, I don't know what does. And then it morphed into LGBT Grant County, where I've been the president for 7 years. Unfortunately, there really aren't a whole lot of resources in Silver City for the trans community. There are, as Susan mentioned, there are several trans people in town and who are very open to answering questions. I've never had a problem asking a question to anyone in the trans community here. I think there's still a problem with the doctors going on. Is that right, Susan? There's still a medical problem, which we're kind of trying to address. I know about a new psychologist in town who's dealt with the LGBT community, which is a big boon. Also, that's really exciting is there's a GSA at the Aldo School now. GSA stands for Gay Straight Alliance. And there's also one at Silver High School for the first time, I think probably in a long time. They call themselves...
Since 2000.
Yeah, there was one there once before, and, well, it's a long story. The group at Silver High calls themselves SAGA, Sexual and Gender Acceptance. Wow. Yeah, it's really great. I've been there twice, only because they have pizza. Well, we bought them pizza once before. They meet in the little theater. There's usually at least a dozen kids, and they say the group is actually twice that big. And believe it or not, most of them are in the drama club. So you know, I know that's kind of stereotypical, but that was their in. That was the way they got in. Last year they tried to start a GSA at the high school through the Key Club, and I'm not exactly sure what that is. The Kiwanis or something. Kiwanis. That didn't work out. But anyway, the principal, I met the principal, he's very accepting, he's a great ally. He loves that bunch of kids in the Saga group, and they're all excited about Pride Fest this year, which is September 15th. And the 4th of July parade, they want to build a float like the size of Miller Library. But you know, they're teenagers, so that's okay. We're gonna let them do it. Actually, there's 2 trans kids in both of the schools, one in each of the schools that Susan, we may want to talk about later, who are struggling. It's not easy being a teenager and being a teenager amongst teenagers. It's not. I haven't forgotten, even though I'm 137 years old, I haven't forgotten what it's like to be a teenager. I don't think I would ever want to go back and be a teenager. Maybe a 20-year-old, but not a teenager. As I said, I think there's slowly getting more acceptance of the trans community in Silver City, and we're slowly getting more resources, but it's been a really slow go, as everyone here in town, the trans community will tell you. It's not easy being a trans person in this town, especially when there's medical issues, psychological issues, health issues of any kind. You know, just being anybody going to a doctor in this town is kind of, well, you know, it's kind of rough. But anyway.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but you all do have brunch every first Sunday or something like that?
Yeah, we have brunch every Sunday. We have brunch every Sunday at Vicky's, and I could actually tell you the menu because we've been there so often. We're also hopefully here really soon going to be offering HIV testing, which is really important. I'm HIV positive myself. I've been that way since March 8th, 1991, when I was born again, and my doctor told me I was probably going to die of old age, which is unfortunately going to happen. HIV is not a death sentence anymore like it used to be. It's a manageable illness. And I'm about as healthy as a 65-year-old person can get. I may not look like it, but I am actually pretty healthy.
Thank you, Ted.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Couple things to add. PFLAG meets the first Tuesday of every month, and we try to have a different topic, discussion, or presentation, or film each time. Also, both of our organizations have some training stuff coming up, right?
We do.
I think so. I know PFLAG, we're planning in September. It's either going to be on the 20th, 19th or the 20th. We're planning a workshop for educators, and because there's a lot of teachers. You know, I was a teacher for 37 years, and I, didn't get a lot of help on how to best protect my LGBTQ students, make sure that their rights are protected, make sure my classroom was a welcoming, safe place for them. And so we're hoping that we have a lot of teachers and other educators attend that. And then, don't you guys?
I remember that. Now we're planning, hopefully it'll work out. We did a kind of a little symposium for mental health care professionals in town that wasn't really well attended, but we weren't thwarted by that. We plan on another one for medical health care providers in town. Hopefully we can get some more encouragement. I got a couple of speakers through Adrian Lawyer, who's the director of the Transgender Resource Center in Albuquerque. And by the way, you can just look them up just by Googling Transgender Resource Center, New Mexico, and you'll get the center in Albuquerque. Adrian's a wonderful guy, not afraid to answer questions, and can point you to resources, although Albuquerque has so many more resources than we do. But anyway, we want to do that sometime. I think actually it's planned for, we have a date set, August 25th, which is my birthday, just in case you want to know.
Thank you, Ted. All right, does anyone have any questions for anyone that is on the panel?
First Tuesday of the month, P-Flag, what time and where?
7 o'clock at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship on Swan Street.
Thank you.
Yeah, come on down.
Any questions?
I'm not really sure what I'm asking, but in Virginia, we had an interesting experience. One of the young people that came with his mother to our PFLAG meetings was a trans man, but he was 15, 16, he was in those years. And he did not want to own the term trans. He just wanted to be a young man. I think I want to ask, is this common now among young people?
I could speak to that.
Uh-huh.
Trans is a qualifier, and I'm in a lot of groups and I'm always struggling with people to quit using that. I'm not a trans. I transitioned, and then that was done and over with. And now I'm a person. You know, I don't need a qualifier. Like when somebody's driving a cab, we don't need to say that's a black driver. I mean, why do we need the qualifier? And so so unless somebody they're proud that they're trans and they want to tell everybody, which is cool, I'm okay with that. But otherwise, I think we need to avoid adjectives or qualifiers when we're talking about people whenever we can.
You knew that right off the bat.
So this is a question for Jonie and Susan. How have your experiences before and after transitioning affected your career choices, good or bad? And also, how do you think this might be different for trans youth today moving forward?
So, I've worked with a lot of trans youth. What happens more times, 40% of the kids on the street are in the LGBT community. Parents throw them out. They have a hard time getting work. If they're feminine, gay person, or overly masculine, we could say, or just a masculine woman, they have a hard time getting hired. Trans women have a history of working as sex workers. It's about the only job they could find. I've known several sex workers. In fact, in New York, I survived through survival sex when I was 18. It's not easy. Kids come out, they get thrown out of the house. Nobody's going to hire a boy that's wearing lipstick and has long hair. I mean, they're just not going to hire that person. They're not going to hire anybody that looks different than the American norm, whatever that may be. And so, yes, they have an extreme hard time. I went full-time after I had retired. When I was young, I mentioned that I had gone full-time. I was about 30 years old. I contemplated suicide because I didn't see a future. I just could not picture a future. So again, like I say, 42% of trans people have attempted suicide. So it's not easy when you transition. If you're lucky, you transition very young, you take puberty blockers so that you don't get secondary sex characteristics. Then when you start on your hormones, do hormone replacement therapy, you can move freely in society until somebody finds out, then you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, in my case, I don't know that I really had a life before transition. I kept changing careers. I think I was so uncomfortable with myself and actually so full of self-hate that I kept thinking if I changed this or that, I could live with myself, which of course didn't work. So I really didn't have much of a career before I transitioned. I didn't have a life. I'd never been married. At least I had the good sense to see that was not going to work. So it just about 12 years ago, everything all came together. And unfortunately, by that time, I was getting ready to retire, or I did shortly thereafter. Maybe it's not unfortunate. I love being retired. But it did make a huge difference in my life, yes, because now I'm comfortable with myself. And your other question, is it different for young people? My goodness, I hope so. I believe it would have to be, you know. Particularly if they are willing to stand up for themselves and they get support somewhere. So that they don't end up being the opposite of who they really feel they're supposed to be, or pretending to be the opposite of who they really feel they're supposed to be. Which I guess was the case for me. I was getting ready to think it's gonna be a lot better. Now, the political situation in this country is problematic. So I'm not quite so sure. A lot of scary things are happening. I mean, I'm scared. I would think kids would be scared too. But if they can find the support they need and believe in themselves, find the support they need, it's going to be a lot easier.
How did your coming out affect your relationship with your family?
And vice versa. I waited till after my parents both died. Well, no, I've been to support groups, I've been, but my parents, I can't say they never knew, but it was something they couldn't possibly have handled. And with both of them ailing, I didn't want to push them over the edge. So my parents, I didn't really try to transition until after both my parents died. And I never had kids, so I didn't have to worry about that. And I told myself, and it's in my book, if you ever care to read it, it's in this library, by the way, if you don't want to buy a copy, and the city library, that it's, well, I don't know how to describe it. It's sort of like, in the space of maybe 1 year, my life finally came together. But my parents were dead by then. And so I lost all my friends. That's probably typical. I had to build up all new friends. My two sisters, one older and one younger, were shocked when I came out. But they were able to deal with it. In fact, my older sister said in her profession, she had two professional co-workers who were trans women. Neither was anything like me. I mean, you could see we're all different, but it kind of helped her. And she's dealt with it very well.
Susan, do you want to answer that?
My family still loves me very much. We split up for various reasons, which wasn't to do with trans, it had to do with other things. And my mom, when I came out to her, was actually, she ended up, well, actually her response was, yeah, I knew. So, and she liked me better as a trans person than before. So, anyway, she passed away at 92. I took care of her for her last year, and she was always proud to introduce me to all of her friends as her daughter. And so my mom was cool. And But anyway, yeah, for support is the big thing. Support here, support trans kids need support. There's still lots of people out there who just think that we're some kind of, it's some kind of choice. Why would anybody choose to be trans? It's beyond me, but why does anybody choose to be gay? I mean, if you just stop and think about it, you realize nobody would. And so, but still they come up against this wall, and it can be very difficult. So gay people tend to move to safe spaces like San Francisco or something. Silver City, actually, I have never had any problem with any of the doctors or any of the hospitals, with anybody that I've talked with. I've always found people understanding and supportive, but I've always been just out front and talked to them about what's going on. And I've had the doctors here sit down with me and discuss protocol with trans people. So I think that it depends on approach, and it depends on whether you're upfront and whether you feel good about yourself. I mean, I'm not ashamed of who I am. I like myself. So I think that makes all the difference.
Thank you, Susan.
Just a comment. The normal American family is approximately 2.7 children. Thank you.
Hi. So I'm genderqueer. I do not like labels whatsoever. I hate pronouns. I think they're the worst thing in the society. But on that front, do you like when people come out and ask you about pronouns, or do you prefer them not to?
Well, me, in Silver City, I mean, this is really a tiny town in the middle of nowhere. Okay, I've been there 30 years, so I love Silver City, but I'm aware this is not Seattle or New York City. So I identify as genderqueer, and I use they and them when I'm with my tribe and my people as my pronouns. In Silver City, people man me and they say miss, this, and that. I just don't bother. I don't bother about correcting pronouns. I get surd sometimes. That's because people don't look up from the counter and pay attention, and so I don't care. And I just don't care. I mean, just don't call me late for dinner. But I really don't care. And but yeah, I don't identify as a gender. I like being a gender because I think neither gender really fits.
Do people want to go over the pronoun issue a little more?
I'd like to hear more.
Yeah, I have to confess that's the one thing that can get me upset even now. But I think part of the confusion is, and we alluded to this earlier, that people in the society, English speakers, confuse sex and gender. And not to understand the difference between sex and gender, that's really, really bizarre. Gender is linguistic. You know, you don't need to even think about what's in somebody's pants. That is, somebody comes across as feminine, they come across as feminine, they come across as masculine, they can, you know, and if you're not sure, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking. It's a lot better than making assumptions, personally. So, the other thing is, because this is a patriarchal society, then the male is kind of the normative. And let me ask a question. How many women here have been called sir? That's even more than I thought. You know, actually I feel better because somebody did just about a week ago. Wasn't looking at me, but or I guess wasn't looking at me because if they, well, anyway. And I go like, what? I just walked away. But I see it happens a lot, and that's because it's normal. Spanish is a much better language in this respect because you can see, and we have expression, you know, we have, in Spanish there's things like you talk about el dentista. You know, the interesting combinations. And in Spanish, in colloquial terms anyway, street Spanish, not only the female but also the male genital organs are feminine gender. You get a sense of the arbitrariness of it. And English-speaking people in this country just don't seem to understand the arbitrariness of the whole gender thing. And they somehow think it relates to what's downstairs, which is nonsense. And hopefully some people are going to wake up. Some of them just won't listen, and I don't know what to say. And I suppose that...
We have one more question.
Oh, okay.
Can I just address this real quickly? A lot of younger people don't see the point of surgery. Many younger trans people are not opting to. They say that, they refer to their penis as a female penis. They refer to their vagina as a male vagina. They don't have the body dysphoria that we grew up with. Things are different for them because they've known it since childhood and they're comfortable with their bodies. I think we're going to see down the road, us older trans people are going to be a thing of the past. People are going to transition when they're young. I certainly would if it had been possible. So I think we're sort of a dying breed in a way. That's just the way it is. And I think a lot of young people actually don't care about gender so much, like what they're called. It's not such a big deal, where in our generation it's very important because we're clinging to an identity. And I think young people are very different than the older generation trans people.
So a lot of people consider themselves to be allies, but often we forget what it truly means to be an ally. So what are some steps to better support our transgender community? What can we do as a community to support?
That's a good question. PFLAG is a wonderful ally. There's allies, wonderful allies that go to the LGBTQ breakfast and are extremely supportive. Allies to me are, women would not have the vote if it wasn't for allies. Women weren't allowed to vote, so how'd they get to vote? Well, allies voted for women to have the vote. There's only about 5% or so, gay people in the US, but somehow the vote carried that gay people have a right to marry. So that was allies. So thanks to organizations like PFLAG and many other ally organizations, we get to be supported. There was allies, many allies went to the South during the 60s in the Civil Rights Movement. We were allies. When I was 18 years old, I did a lot of picketing with Congress for Racial Equality, and I was an ally. I wasn't a leader, I was an ally. So what can allies do? They are the water carriers. They are the ones that allow us to be who we are. They're the ones that support us, but they don't lead. So when I'm in a group and I'm wearing my Black Lives Matter button and I've marched with Black Lives people in Seattle, I'm not the leader, I'm the water carrier. And so I think, what does an ally do? The ally supports the group that they're being an ally for. Support them, vote for them, back them up, stand up for them. You hear somebody that's, doing an off-color joke, somebody doing a sexist joke, stand up. Somebody does a gay joke, stand up and say, I'm offended by that. Somebody talks about, I saw this tranny come in a bar kind of joke. Well, you stand up for it and say, that's offensive, I don't like that. And so that's what an ally does. And I always point to PFLAG because they're the greatest. They were people back in the 60s when it was dangerous to stand up for more minority people, but they did. And so, yeah, that's how to be an ally.
I would suggest on one-on-one is the way I would think of that. Despite being a heterosexual woman, I have lots of women friends, and not having only been here 4 years, I guess. I have lots of women friends here in Grant County who I love dearly. Several are in this room right now. And they mean a lot to me. And the reason they mean a lot to me, well, it's just because they're friends, but also I can tell in relating to them that I'm a woman to them. I'm a friend to them. And they treat me just like they treat their other women friends. And to me, that's priceless.
Thank you, Jonie.
I don't want to be treated any different. I'm just another woman.
Thank you, Jonie. Thank you so much. Thank you to, yes? Yes.
Please. Thank you. Personally, I think the important thing about supporting the trans community is just respect. Respect them for who they are. You expect that of other people towards you, so why shouldn't you give that same respect to someone else? You might scratch your head and going, okay, I don't understand what's going on here, but you know what? 99 times out of 100, you can ask any trans person a question, and it might seem like it's really personal and really goopy. They'll answer you. They won't hate you for it, but they'll answer that question. And as Susan said before, why would anyone choose to go through this? They don't choose this. That's who they are. So respect them for that. I think that's the most important thing you could ever do for not just other people around you, but for the trans community. Just respect them for who they are. That's all they ask, I think. Thank you.
One quick comment in closing. Some of you remember Tyler Connolly. He lived here with Rob for a long time, and Tyler and Rob are in St. Louis, Missouri now. But Tyler always said, no one can argue with your story, that your story is yours. So I think, that's good advice. So I think there's certain people right now in the political climate in the country that I'd like to argue with, but it's easier for me to just tell my story, listen to theirs, and just keep the conversation going.
Thank you to all of you for being here tonight and sharing your knowledge and your story with the community. We would like you to invite to continue the conversation. We have some snacks and sweets and hot chocolate and coffee outside of the library. If you want to approach Susan or Jonie K. Rose or Damie or Ted personally, you're welcome to do so. We'd also like to thank the Miller Library staff for hosting us and the students at the Center for Gender Equity and Social Justice. Thank you all, and thank you to all of you who are here present and have given your undivided attention to our speakers today. Thank you so much.